All right, everyone, welcome to Strictly Sports. We're here for our Atlanta Braves season preview here, and this is a team that's won the NL East the last 2 years. You've already listened to us do our Marlins video. Well, hopefully you've listened to us do our Marlins video, our Phillies video, and our Mets video. But this is a team in the Braves, they've won the division the last 2 years. They have had some underwhelming playoff performances, but they have some raw talent in that lineup, specifically speaking with Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzie Albies, Freddie Freeman. Those are the three big hitters in that lineup, and then add the new addition, Marcell Ozuna, as well. So it's, four legitimate hitters, very legitimate hitters in that lineup. And then after that, you have Ender Inciarte, Dansby Swanson, Johan Camargo, projected to be the new third baseman now that Josh Donaldson left to Minnesota. And then the new catcher, Travis d'Arnaud, who we mentioned on the Marlins video, getting a 2-year, $13 million deal. And, I look at that lineup, Steven, I get it. They've won the division the last 2 years, but that lineup might be a little overrated.
Yeah, you could look at it that way. I mean, I just think they're very powerful 1 through 4. But you have some key players down 6, 7, and 8 that you can play with. Dansby Swanson, young player out of was it Vanderbilt, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, out of Vanderbilt. I mean, he batted 251 last year, 17 homers, 65 RBIs. So good production there from Swanson. And then the seventh spot, they're going to flip it in between Austin Riley and it's Johan
Camargo,
Camargo.
yeah. I
Yeah,
do
so I
like
mean,
Austin Riley, yeah.
yeah, so both those guys are about 230 hitters. So you look at the seventh spot, not a bad place to have them, young guys. And then you got Ender Inciarte, who in my projections, they have him at the eighth spot. He batted 250 last year, 5 homers, 24 RBIs. The guy can be your platoon guy in your eighth spot, which isn't bad. But 1 through 6, I think they're solid. They also added Travis d'Arnaud, former Ray. He batted 251 last year. Altogether, 69 RBIs, 16 homers. So the power's there. But, with the expectations, with the new contract, is he going to be able to play the same as he did the last, second half of the season, what he did with the Rays? So some question marks there. 1 through 4, no question about it. Those guys can really rip the cover off the baseball and play. But, 5 through 9, what are you going to get? So, some excitement at the top, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, because I mean, Ronald Acuna Jr. is, I would say, probably a top 5 right fielder because now he's not in left field anymore because of Ozuna. He's in right field, so you have him. He's one of the brightest young players in the game. There's no taking away from Ronald Acuna. Then you have Ozzie Albies, who's a top 5 second baseman, probably top 3, and Freddie Freeman, who I think is the best first baseman in baseball. So it's not just ripping off the cover. I mean, it's really amazing talent that they have, and I'm not undermining that. I'm just trying to point out here, you look at the rest of that lineup, like you said, 5 through 9. What are you going to get? You have a center fielder in Inciarte, who some sites have projected as the 5 hitter. I don't see that. I think he's probably a guy that might hit lower in the order, and they might have Swanson in that 5 hole. But it's like, okay, let's say Dansby Swanson's your 5 hitter. Well, all he did was hit 250 with 15 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that really what you want out of a 5 hitter? That's what I'm concerned with here. So can Austin Riley be that guy and take over third base? Because I've heard really good things about him in the minor leagues. That could happen. But let's say Travis d'Arnaud becomes the 5 hitter. He only hit 16 home runs, and that was his career best. So it's just like, where are they going to get even a 5 hitter for this team?
Exactly. It's like you're flipping a coin almost with some of these averages. Like you're batting 250. In the major leagues, you want to be batting 275. That's the benchmark average for me. Is if you're batting 275 or better, you're a proven major league hitter. You're a guy who can be in the 1 through 9 lineup day in and day out. So you just don't know what you're going to get with this lineup. But you got 2 guys on the bench who I have starred here. You have Denny Henchavarea, who's a second baseman.
Yeah.
Then you got Nick, and then you have Nick Markakis, who's been in the league for a
yeah.
while. Long-time Baltimore Oriole. And now he's played in Atlanta here that's just coming up here on his
and he can
5th
still
year.
hit. He can actually still hit.
Yeah, so I have him pulled up here. I mean, he's a guy who batted 285 last year, 9 homers, 62 RBIs, 356 on base, 420 slug. So a guy who really, if people are struggling that lineup, a guy you can throw in there and kind of put a spark, get them going. And then Hechavarria, who isn't a bad at bat, 241 last year, 9 homers, 33 RBIs in a small sample size, only 203 at bats. So I mean, you have a kind of a safety net there with those two guys, um, in your on your depth chart. But um, so I mean, if things go bad for some of these guys like Austin Riley, I mean, or Inciarte, you can throw in a Markakis there in place of him. So
Yeah, like I don't get it. Why don't they just put Acuna in center field, Markakis in right field, and sit in Ciarte? Like that's what
yeah,
I would be doing.
that's I mean, if you want production right away and see where your lineup is, don't mess with it. Don't put Inciarte there. Don't try to, you know, force the hand on something that you don't really know what you have. You have Markakis, who has a track record in the major leagues, and he can produce. Throw him out there, and if that doesn't go well, then you can throw in Inciarte, and then you can flip flop those two and see what you have.
Yeah, and listen, like NCRT's been good in the past. He has talent. He's been a top 10 center fielder in the past, but it's just that's only been for a year or two run. I mean, I'm taking a look at his stats right now. You look at his 2018, and that's when he played more of a full season because he only played 65 games in 2019. In 2018, he hit 265 with 10 homers and 61 RBIs. In 2017, he hit 304 with 11 home runs and 57 RBIs. So tops, he is what Markakis is right now. And that's why I would say play Acuna in center field and Markakis in right. Because at best, Inciarte is what Nick Markakis is right now.
Yeah, and he's a hustle guy too. I mean, the guy who really, if you listen to, I have a couple of Braves fans that are friends that are Braves fans, and they love him. I mean, the guy who is an all-star. I mean, plays hard, loves the game. I think you really have to. He's got to be one of your starters because he knows the way. He knows how to work at bats, or knows how to work counts, gets on base all the time. A guy you really don't want to be facing when there's runners in scoring position because you'll get a single, he'll pop it into right field anywhere, somehow find a way to get on base. I like him, and I think he's got to be your guy in right field to start the season.
I agree. And you look at the rest of the lineup, and we'll focus on those big hitters right now. We haven't really mentioned it yet, but I mean, Josh Donaldson is not on this team anymore. That's a big deal, and they try to replace his production now with Marcell Ozuna. They're putting Ozuna in the four hole now to replace Donaldson. That's just not going to cut it in my estimation. I think Donaldson is. I mean, it goes without words. He is a tremendous hitter. He can hit a home run whenever, whatever situation it is. He's one of the most clutch guys in the big leagues. I've always loved Josh Donaldson. You can't replace him with Marcell Ozuna, who year to year, you don't know if you're going to get the 220 guy or the guy who's going to hit 35 bombs. And so that's happened with Ozuna throughout his career. But then I look at the big hitters and I say, they're going to need Ronald Acuna to do what he did last season. Acuna hit 41 home runs and 101 RBIs last year. You're going to need him to do that again. You're going to need Freddie Freeman to keep going at the pace that he's been at, which is the best first baseman in baseball. Last year he had 38 home runs and 121 RBIs, and they barely won the division. And those guys still have those types of years. So I look at it and I say, okay, you have a good lineup. With those first three or four, you don't know what you're going to get 5 through 9. But then you say to yourself, well, you're going to need those big hitters to keep being even bigger.
Yeah, I mean for sure. I mean, you look at the 1 through 3. I mean, Acuna, Albies, and then Ozuna. I mean, guys who had great years last year, but you know as well as I do. I mean, baseball is just it's a brutal game. It's unforgiving. I mean, Acuna had a great year, 41 homers, 101 RBIs. Can you replicate that? I mean, not many times you see in baseball now in this day and age. You have so many stats, so many situational pitchers, guys who come in for a one at bat to face you, but well now you have to
Hey,
have
well,
it
that's
more.
over.
Yeah, that's over now with the new three batter rule. But 100 RBIs, I mean, it's hard to come by. You don't see many of those guys anymore, especially doing a repeated after repeated year. I mean, guys like obviously Bellinger, Trout can do that, but for this Braves team to try to repeat as division champs, have success, you're gonna need those guys to produce, if not even more than they did last year. So I think for Acuna, you're gonna have he's gonna have to have 45 homers and 110 RBIs. Albie's gonna have, I think, almost gonna have 100 RBIs. He had 86 last year.
Yeah,
Homers are there. So I mean, you're asking a lot from these guys to produce when you hats off to these three, to Albies and Acuna. They had great years. It was fun watching them, but to do it again this year,
because like
tough.
Freddie Freeman will do it again. Like
Yeah,
he's been doing this
he's
for 5, 6, 7 years. But those other guys,
yeah,
who knows?
because they're young too. I mean, Albies and Acuna. I mean, they've only been in the league a couple years. I mean, they're not these guys who have been here for 7, 8 years who really know how to, like, what it feels like to struggle a whole lot. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like the wall, they're gonna hit a wall at some point, and they're gonna have to figure out how to make adjustments and get over that hump. And so until that happens, you don't know what can happen here. They could come out and light it up, or they can come out and have a sophomore slump after last year. So
To me, it's can you do it the second full year, and then after that,
exactly.
I'll be willing to say, because you look at 2018 and Acuna, in 111 games had 26 home runs and 64 RBIs. That's amazing. So, but that's not a full year, and that's only 111 games. I want to see it one more time. If he can go 35, 40 home runs again, then if we're doing this video again next year, I'm going to say he's a guy that you can book at 35 plus, 100 plus RBIs. But we don't know that yet. That's just something that you want. That's something you desire out of him. It's not necessarily something you'll get. Another thing that's amazing about him, he had 37 steals last year as well. So he's amazing on the base paths as well, talking about Acuna. But yeah, again, this overall lineup, you're going to need a lot of guys to overproduce. But that's a lot about the hitting. So let's get into the starting rotation here. This is weak as well to me. Mike Soroka is their number one starter right now. He's only had 1 year under his belt, and that's something we just talked about with Ronald Acuna. We need to see it again year two, or full year two. We need to see that out of Soroka again as well. And then you look at the rest of the rotation. It looks like Cole Hamels might be their number two starter right now. That's not good. He's not Cole Hamels from 4 years ago. He's probably a 3 or 4 starter now. Then they have Max Fried projected as the 3 starter. Then Mike Foltynewicz, who actually got sent to AAA at one point last year. And then, yeah, he's the pitcher that got absolutely demolished by the St. Louis Cardinals in the playoffs. I think that was like the 10-run first inning. And then to complete the rotation, you have Sean Newcomb, who was in the bullpen for a lot of last year. So that rotation is fairly weak, Steven. I mean, can that get them through a full 162 game season?
No, I don't think it can at all. That's why I did some second guessing with the division standings. I looked at that. I looked at the lineup and I go, wow, this team can really do it again. They can repeat. But then I looked at the pitching. I looked at the rotation, dove down, got some deeper stats, and Soroka. I mean, you look at these guys. I mean, great year last year, 2.68 ERA and 29 starts. 142 Ks, only 41 walks. It's 111 WHIP. It's great. I mean, if you're a starting pitcher, 13-4, carry the weight for that team. But then you look at 2, 3, and 4. It's very suspect, and that's what can really hurt them because you need at least 3 solid starting pitchers. You look at Cole Hamels last year, 500 pitcher, 3.8 ERA, 17 homers given up, 56 walks.
Yeah, like to me,
Just
Cole Hamels is replacing Dallas Keuchel from last year. They're basically the
yeah,
same pitcher at this point. But then overall, the net loss, you're looking at they lost Julio Teheran, and they didn't replace him with anyone.
exactly. So you look at like the Braves who they lost in the offseason. You lost Donaldson, you lost Keuchel, and then you replaced him with Azuna, and then you replaced him with Cole Hamels. So you look at a guy like Keuchel, who I mean, a dominant left-handed pitcher. I like his stuff. He'll be back. He's with the White Sox now. He went 8-8 last year, but he held out as we remember the first half of the season trying to find a home. Had a 3.75 ERA. But Cole Hamels, like we talked about, isn't the same guy that we saw, in Chicago, in Philadelphia. Not the same guy, not the same jump, not the same velocity, movement that we saw in his previous years. So, and he's coming off shoulder discomfort. He's not. They said he was going to start the season on time. Now that we're in this hiatus, he'll obviously be the 1 or 2 starter. So you just don't know what you're going to get from Hamels. Definitely not a bad guy to throw out there. with the experience wise, but just not the same person we've seen the last, um, 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, and they, Atlanta, we talked about the rotation, but they do have a very good bullpen as well. They've got Mark Melanson, Shane Green, Will Smith, Luke Jackson, Chris Martin out there. Those are all guys that can toss it out there. I was thinking about it before we did these videos. They probably have a top five bullpen in baseball. It's them, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Rays, and probably the Mets as a top five bullpen, and then throw in the Reds as well. It's probably the sixth best bullpens in baseball. And so if you're looking at, maybe the Braves are thinking, okay, if we can get our 6, 7 innings, maybe 8 inning starts out of Soroka, then we can rely on those days to kind of give the bullpen a rest. And then those other 4 days, you're looking at getting at least 5 innings out of your starter. And maybe they're thinking after those 5 innings, we'll rely on the bullpen for those other four.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you have a solid bullpen, you can rely on them. Um, being a Rays fan, though, what your concern is with having a great bullpen is that you're too trigger happy with going to your bullpen.
Yeah.
So when your starter gets in trouble, your first instinct is go, hey, I'm gonna go straight to the bullpen. I'm gonna get out of this jam. I'm gonna work them. The only problem with that is you tax your bullpen too early. Then you get to these like tight games, game 140, 150. Then you start to kind of get tighter. Your bullpen isn't producing like it did early in the season. You tax them way too early. Guys get tired, their arms wear. That's the one danger of it. But this bullpen can do it. I mean, they have Darren O'Day in the bullpen too, who's
Yeah.
been in the league a while. Had a 1.69 ERA, only 8 games last year. But guys that can really, you can put pieces together and see where it takes them. I mean, if they get a couple starters to solidify themselves, and then maybe call up some guys from AAA and find maybe one of those guys to solidify your fourth or fifth spot. Then you could see maybe some hope there with the pitching side for the Braves.
Yeah, because I mean, you could maybe get Sean Newcomb, who's projected as the 5 starter, because when he came up to the big leagues, he was starting. Last year, they moved him to the pen because they didn't have room for him in their rotation. Maybe he's the guy that comes up. I mean, Max Fried is a good pitcher, but he as well. He's bounced back and forth from rotation to bullpen. So it's like, can you get that length from him? Can you get those guaranteed 5, 6 innings? That's something that's important. And Steven, both of our teams went through this last year. In the playoffs, the bullpens just collapsed. The Yankees and the Rays, it's just you overwork them too much through a 6 month schedule, and then you get to the postseason, and their stuff isn't as crisp. They're very worn out. Their arms are stretched out way too much. You need starting pitchers to give you depth in order to be prepared for October. And this is a team in the Atlanta Braves that wants to get to October, and that's their goal. So they need starting pitching to propel them farther into the season.
Exactly. Like you look at teams that have won the World Series in the last 3 years, is their starting pitching has been healthy, and healthy is the key. I mean, the Rays and the Yankees were both beat up so bad last year and they had a piece catch. They were calling guys up left and right, having they were doing the opener, what they call it now in the league.
Yep.
Doing that way too much. And so if the Braves want to get to the postseason again, they're going to need guys to step up and give them length. You can't be taxing that bullpen, early. You can't have them throwing 5 innings a night for the first 40 games, 50 games, because by the time you get to the last quarter of the season, you're gassed. And you get to October and you're facing teams that are really juiced up. Like, let's say you run into a Dodgers team, for example. That team has no worries. They have so much talent. They can just roll their guns out, and they have no worries. They can go 7, 8, 9 in a game, and they'll throw those top three bullpen guys and mow you down. So for the Braves, you can't let that bullpen get worn down too early. They're going to need guys to step up. And right here I have a guy, Kyle Wright, who's their fourth rated prospect in the system, is on their roster now, has struggled mightily. So 0-3 with an 8.69 ERA last year.
Oof.
And 20 innings pitched. They tried that experiment, and you can expand on these prospects if you want, but it's just they're gonna have to find someone to come fill that fifth spot for them in the time being.
Yeah, for sure. And whether that comes through trade or maybe they have to wait a season and then they pounce on free agency next year, but they definitely need to fill that spot out. So Let's look at and there's really not, we've talked about the farm system in the other videos. There's not much of a, major league ready prospect that's coming up for them. They're pretty much filled at every position. I mean, think about it. Acuna is their long-term outfielder. They have Swanson as their long-term shortstop, second base, first base are covered. So they really don't have any position players that are coming up in the next few years that are going to take over at the major league level, other than really Austin Riley. But he's already hit the big league, so I don't really consider him to be, a hot shot minor league prospect if he's already played a full season at the big league level. And another guy we didn't mention at the bench, Adam Duvall. I like trying to mention everyone. He's a guy that can also, kind of like Jay Bruce on the Phillies, he can come in, hit a homer off the bench, spell some guys in the outfield sometimes as a right-handed bat. So he can be of use possibly as well. Because I remember a few years ago, Duvall was hitting 20-plus homers in Cincinnati. So, Steven, let's look at this. Over/under wins losses on this team. Where do you have them placed in the division, and what about their wins losses?
After some, advanced studying, shuffling around, I have them right now in the third spot in the division. I have them at 84 and 78. 84 and 78. I just think the top two teams in this division are very. I think you can't sleep on the Nats. The respect for them being the for being the champions of the league last year, and then the Mets are just loaded. So I think 84 wins is with them right now with that rotation, that bullpen. But it's just all projections. I just think that this division is too powerful for them to repeat again.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I'm shocked because I remember we were talking the other day, and you had them winning the division, and then now they're in third place.
Yeah, it's just there's too many question marks right now, and I look at the two teams above them who have that consistency, who have a strong base with their starting five rotation. So right now, unless things change, if they pick up another pitcher and things fall into place for the Braves, they could compete for that wild card spot with the Nationals. So they're not. I'm not writing them off. I'm just saying right now where they're at on paper, they're just not that team that they were last year.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go over you on the wins because they won the division, and that's a pretty far drop off to go down to 86. So I would say, or no, you had them at 84.
Yeah, 84 right now. Yeah,
I would have them at 88 probably, and barely. Actually, I'm not going to say that part yet because I was thinking we probably should do like a video where we just do playoff predictions, just so that we're not confusing people when we haven't talked about certain teams yet. But yeah, I would have them at 88 wins, probably, I guess, barely missing the playoffs. That's all I'll say right now about that. But we will get into playoff predictions at some point in the total scope of the league. But I do have them at 88 wins. They won 90-something games last year, a little bit of a drop-off. You lose your cleanup hitter, third baseman. You lose two starting pitchers, replace them with one mediocre starting pitcher, and nothing else really happens to this team. I think they're going to drop to 88 wins. So that'll do it for this Atlanta Braves season preview. You can listen to us on a bunch of different platforms now. You listen to us on our YouTube channel, Strictly Sports. Follow us on Twitter to find all of these links at Strict Sports FAU. You can listen to us on Spotify, on Anchor, a bunch of different places. We are hoping to get on Apple Podcasts in the near future. This podcast is starting to roll. Tomorrow you can hear our video on the defending World Series champion Washington Nationals and the number 6 seed, or are we at number 5? Number 5 seed in the East in the NBA. Those will be the videos released tomorrow. So thanks, Steven, and we'll see you tomorrow, guys.